Here's a number that should not exist: 33. That is the age at which a highly decorated MIT economist, someone who had literally written equations about rational financial decision-making, declared bankruptcy, not because of bad luck, not because of a market crash, because he had spent 11 years earning a salary most people will never see in a lifetime and saved almost none of it. He is not alone. A study tracking 2,000 lottery winners found that within 5 years, the majority had returned to their original financial position. Not because they spent recklessly on yachts, because they did not understand how to hold wealth once they had it. Another study, this one from the Journal of Economic Perspectives, found that financial literacy scores have almost no correlation with actual financial outcomes for people above a certain income level. Read that again. Knowing more about money does not reliably make you better at money, so what is going on? Why do the people with the most education, the highest salaries, the most access to information, why do they keep ending up broke, stressed, or quietly drowning in debt they cannot explain? That is what this is about. Let us start with a man named Isaac Newton, possibly the most intelligent person who has ever lived. He invented calculus almost as a side project. He described the laws of gravity. He rewrote how humanity understands light. The man was operating on a different plane of existence intellectually. In 1720, he invested in a company called the South Sea Company. The stock was rising. Everyone was talking about it. He bought in, made a profit, then watched the price keep climbing. So he sold. Smart move. He cashed out. Then he watched it go higher. His friends were getting richer. Neighbors were getting richer. The price just kept going. So Newton did what any brilliant mind would do when confronted with evidence that contradicts his position. He ignored the evidence. He bought back in bankrupt this time, near the top. When the bubble collapsed, and it always collapses, Newton lost the equivalent of $3 million in today's money. He reportedly said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." That line has lived for 300 years because it contains a truth that most financial education refuses to teach. Intelligence and financial behavior are almost completely separate systems in the brain. One is about processing information, the other is about managing emotion under uncertainty. And no degree in the world trains you for the second one. Here is what neuroscience has quietly established over the last 2 decades. When you make a financial decision, whether to buy, sell, spend, you are not using your analytical brain first, you are using your emotional brain first. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and long-term thinking, gets consulted after the fact. It is not the engine. It is the press secretary. It explains what the emotional brain already decided and makes it sound reasonable. This is not a flaw. It is architecture. Human brains evolved to make fast decisions under physical threat. They did not evolve to think clearly about compound interest over 30 years. Now here is the cruel part. Smart people, people with advanced degrees, complex reasoning abilities, high verbal IQs, are often better at constructing narratives that justify bad financial decisions. They do not make fewer emotional decisions. They make more convincing sounding emotional decisions. Researchers call this sophisticated rationalization. A person with average intelligence looks at a bad investment and says, "I don't know, it feels risky." They walk away. A person with a PhD looks at the same investment and says, "Well, if you consider the cyclical nature of this sector and the macroeconomic tailwinds, the risk-adjusted return profile actually suggests they stay in, they lose money." And they still believe they made a good decision. The intelligence became a liability. There is a second mechanism at work, less philosophical, more mathematical, and more quietly devastating. It is called lifestyle inflation, but that name makes it sound optional. It is not. It is nearly automatic. Here is how it works. A person graduates from a good university with student debt. They get a good job, salary starts at $60,000. They live carefully, save a little, life is tight but manageable. 3 years later, they get promoted. Salary goes to $90,000, and something interesting happens. The apartment gets upgraded, the car lease starts, the wardrobe shifts, dinners out become a habit instead of a treat. The gym membership gets the premium tier, a weekend trip becomes a monthly thing. None of these decisions feel reckless. Each one, individually, is completely defensible. You worked hard, you earned this. You deserve to live a little. But the math is doing something the person is not watching. Their expenses have risen almost in exact proportion to their income, sometimes faster. And because the income is higher now, the credit available to them is also higher. So when expenses outpace income, and they often do, the gap gets filled with debt, good-looking debt, manageable-seeming debt, a car loan here, a credit card balance there, a home equity line for a renovation that was basically an investment. Now fast forward another 5 years, salary is $120,000. They look successful, the house, the car, the vacations, they are, by almost every visible metric, doing well. But they have $40,000 in credit card debt, no liquid savings, and a retirement account that would last 18 months if they stopped working today. This is not a rare story. This is a statistical norm among high earners. A Federal Reserve survey found that roughly 40% of Americans could not cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. That number is shocking. But what gets buried in the coverage is that a significant portion of those people have household incomes above $100,000. High income with no wealth, the invisible financial crisis of the educated professional class. Now, let us add the layer that makes this really uncomfortable. These are often people who know about personal finance, they have read the books, they know about diversification, they know what a Roth IRA is, they understand compounding, they have heard the statistics about average market returns, they know, they just do not do. This is called the intention-behavior gap, and it is one of the most studied phenomena in behavioral economics. And here is what researchers have found. Information alone almost never changes long-term financial behavior. What changes behavior is structure. Automatic systems, friction in the wrong places, the single most effective financial intervention discovered in modern behavioral research is automatic enrollment. When companies automatically enroll employees in retirement plans, instead of asking them to opt in, participation rates jump from around 40% to over 90%. Same employees, same information, same salary. Completely different outcomes. The only thing that changed was who had to take action. When saving requires action, smart people find reasons not to act. When saving is the default, even skeptics end up saving. This is a profound and slightly embarrassing finding. The behavioral economists who discovered it essentially concluded that the optimal financial system is one that assumes you will be irrational and designs around it. Knowing the right thing to do is almost irrelevant. Structure beats knowledge every time. But we still have not addressed the deepest driver, the one that does not appear in most finance content because it is uncomfortable. Social positioning. Human beings are social animals with a neurology that is exquisitely calibrated to rank and status. We spend money, especially money we do not have, because spending is communication. It is a signal to our peer group about who we are and where we belong. And for high-earning, highly educated people, the peer group is particularly expensive. When your colleagues are booking business class, it is hard to sit in economy, not because of comfort, because of what it signals. When everyone in your circle buys in a certain neighborhood, you feel a pull toward that neighborhood that has almost nothing to do with financial logic. This is not weakness or vanity, it is neurology. Social exclusion activates the same pain pathways in the brain as physical pain. Spending to maintain social position is, at some level, self-medication. And high earners are surrounded by other high earners, people who set a very expensive floor for what normal looks like. There is a famous study from the 1990s where researchers asked people a simple question. Would you rather earn $50,000 when everyone around you earns $25,000, or $100,000 when everyone around you earns $200,000? The majority chose the $50,000. They would rather be poorer in absolute terms as long as they were richer relative to their neighbors. We are not rational optimizers, we are comparison machines. And no amount of financial education changes the hardware. Here is where it gets darker. When smart, high-earning people end up financially stressed, and they do, at rates that would surprise most people, they experience something that compounds the problem. Financial stress is cognitively impairing. There is now a well-replicated body of research showing that the mental bandwidth consumed by financial worry is roughly equivalent to a loss of 13 IQ points. The effect is similar to losing a full night of sleep. You become worse at planning, worse at reasoning, worse at impulse control. And so the very stress that financial problems create makes you less capable of solving those financial problems. The intelligence that was supposed to protect you becomes degraded at precisely the moment you need it most. Meanwhile, the financial industry, which is not your friend in this story, is expertly designed to capture you during this window of reduced capacity. The credit card offer arrives when you are behind. The high-interest loan advertises during tough times. The financial product with complexity buried in the fine print tends to get sold to people who are tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. This is not accidental. The margin on a well-designed, confusing product is significantly higher than the margin on a simple, transparent one. Complexity is a business model, and intelligence does not protect you from it the way you think. A famous study had law professors review the terms and conditions of common credit agreements. The professors, literally expert readers of legal contracts, significantly underestimated the true cost of the products. If lawyers misread credit card contracts, what chance does everyone else have? And then there is one more layer. Perhaps the most ironic one. Expertise in a related field creates overconfidence in adjacent fields. A surgeon who manages money badly is not just making the same mistakes as everyone else. A surgeon has a specific psychological obstacle. They are used to being the most capable person in the room. They are used to high-stakes decisions where their judgment is correct. They have spent decades having that identity reinforced. Bringing genuine uncertainty into that identity is psychologically threatening. And so the surgeon, like the lawyer, the engineer, the economist, often overestimates their ability to manage money simply because they are competent at something complex and demanding. They self-direct when they should delegate. They resist advice because receiving advice does not match their self-image. They take concentrated positions because their professional judgment feels reliable. The Dunning-Kruger curve, the relationship between confidence and competence, has a second peak at high competence. Genuine experts become overconfident again in ways that are subtler and harder to detect than beginner overconfidence. The beginner does not know what they do not know. The expert knows the field they know very well and does not fully appreciate the size of the field they do not know. A cardiologist who understands leverage is not a financial expert, but they will sometimes behave like one. Let us come back to numbers for a moment. Take two people. Call them Sarah and David. Sarah earns $50,000 a year. She automates 15% of her paycheck into an index fund starting at 25. She does not think about it much. She does not have a Bloomberg terminal. She does not read earnings reports. David earns $200,000 a year. He actively manages his investments. He reads obsessively. He moves in and out of positions. He is informed. He is engaged. He is certain he can beat a passive approach. By 65, if Sarah's fund returns the historical average of around 7% real, and if David underperforms that by just 2% per year through fees, taxes on trades, and misjudgment, Sarah very likely has more money. That scenario is not hypothetical. It is the median outcome documented in academic studies of active versus passive investing across decades. The median active investor underperforms the market, including professional investors, including fund managers with teams of analysts and proprietary data and decades of experience. Over 20-year periods, roughly 80 to 90% of actively managed funds underperform their benchmark index. The effort, the intelligence, the attention, on average, it makes things worse. And yet the narrative persists that sophisticated investors do better because the few who do outperform are visible and loud. And the many who underperform quietly reframe the story. So, let us look at the full picture. We have built an economy that rewards intelligence with high income, and we have a financial system that is specifically engineered to extract that income before it becomes wealth, through lifestyle inflation, through complexity, through products designed to be misunderstood, through the social pressure of expensive peer groups. And we have a culture that has convinced highly intelligent people that managing money is fundamentally an intellectual exercise. That if you are smart enough and study hard enough, you will make better decisions. That belief is not just wrong, it is dangerous, because it prevents the only intervention that actually works. Designing your financial life to require as little decision-making as possible. Automate, simplify, make wealth accumulation the default rather than the exception. Remove the temptation to be clever. The people who quietly build significant wealth over decades are almost never the most financially sophisticated people in the room. They are the people who set up a boring system in their 20s and then mostly forgot about it. Boring, automatic, simple. 3 words that no one has ever used to build a financial media brand. And 3 words that describe, with strange accuracy, the mechanism behind most successful financial outcomes. Newton's quote has stayed with us for 300 years. He could not calculate the madness of people, but here is the thing. Newton was the madness of people. He was not observing an external phenomenon, he was inside it. We all are. The question is not whether you are susceptible to the patterns described in this video. You are. The neurology is universal, the social pressures are real, the systems arrayed against your long-term financial health are sophisticated and well-funded. The question is whether you believe you are the exception, because the data suggests that the people most certain they are the exception, the ones with the credentials, the expertise, the intellectual confidence, are often the ones with the most to lose. The smartest person in the room is usually the last one to realize they are the mark. Think about that the next time a financial decision feels obvious.